Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one!
He got it!
Another one!
Huge hole! He gets the 30. He's going to go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
Galloway finds Rob Finnessy, who fires the three and
He hit it!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on this Friday, March 3rd. It is a cold and rainy March 3rd. Coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, mobile, as we've moved to BB's here on this Friday, as we do each and every Friday. BB's Market, a part of the Endeavor Hospitality Wild Club. Make sure you stop by, and they are your butcher, your baker, no matter where you live. The best, most in-house made products, custom made meats, whatever you need. Full-size bakery as well. Welcome aboard, people. I hope you're having a great day and ready for the weekend, because the weekend is here. We've got tons to talk about. College basketball action last night, especially in the Big Ten, as we keep check on that. What is going on? Where are the standings now? Where are they going, more importantly? It's almost pointless to look at the standings today, because Sunday, the last day, is just going to be a free-for-all with, I think, all 10 out of the 14 teams are playing on Sunday, I believe. I'll have to pull that up, but it's going to be like Selection Sunday. It really is, with the Big Ten Championship going on that following Sunday on Selection Sunday. But for the Big Ten tournament, it's going to be like Selection Sunday. Who's going to fit in where? We don't know, and I don't know that. I'm pretty sure we've never been this deep without knowing what that's going to come. Looking forward to talking to Alec Lasley from thehoosier.com, as we'll get caught up on all of that, as well as Zach Osterman from the Indy Star. Also, we're expecting Mike Davis and Antoine Davis. Hopefully that happens. Antoine, of course, was on a journey to pass Pistol Pete Maravich's all-time NCAA scoring record, which is a record I thought that could not even be touched. But Antoine touched it. He didn't get there. He falls 3 points short. But, hey, his name is in a place that it will never, ever come off of. Now, he may get moved down eventually one day. Who knows? I don't think so, because this was 5 years of scoring for him versus the three of his Pistol Pete. We've got Indiana basketball, of course, to preview, as they will take on the Michigan Wolverines on Sunday. Michigan played last night against Illinois in a game they desperately needed. I believe they lost that game. We'll go over all the Big Ten scores, standings, schedules, what's happening this weekend. And, of course, we'll get to your comments from the Andy Moore Honda hotline, as you guys are lighting it up already. Jason, appreciate you. Tell the fourth graders we said hello, as he is watching from his classroom up in Decatur. Man, I bet it's cold up there today. And good news, Jason, soon you will be able to listen to us on 1380 The Fan in Fort Wayne. So hopefully you can pick up their signal, but that would give you the opportunity to find us on the air there as well. But we appreciate you so much. John says Iowa was like a buzzsaw. Doesn't think anyone beat them that night. Must be talking about when Indiana played. Our man, Fozan Masri from Amman, Jordan. He's on. He's checking in. We appreciate you, brother. Hope you're doing well. Illinois. Oh, my God. I fell asleep watching that game. What a tragic loss. I mean, that was for me. As that game goes to double overtime, losing to Illinois, which that in essence is probably going to knock them out. I've said that before. I thought there was a loss, and it might have been to Indiana, but I thought there was a certain loss that I said, well, that'll probably put a fork in them. And then they went nuts and started winning. But yeah, that one's going to be tough to come back for as Michigan loses to Illinois, which I think that's best for Indiana. Indiana already has now. They've got the win over Michigan, but they've got a game with them. They have a game with them on Sunday. So that's the game Indiana cannot let slip away. Because of what else is going on, I think Indiana can slide into that double bye if they just take care of business. We've already said that once, and they got smoked by Iowa, but they still have yet another chance. Unbelievably, this Big Ten season is just crazy. We'll pull those standings up, or I don't know. John, the producer's on assignment today, so we've got our friend Joe, the producer, on board. Joe, I'm not sure if you can grab the Big Ten standings and put them up or not. It's just an image, but if you can, grab that for us. We'll have those for a look-see. Let's see. Just going through the Andy Moore Honda hotline real quick to see any comments. Andrew says if they win, they can be anywhere from a 2 to a 6 seed. No. Now, you're talking about in the Big Ten tournament. Yes. It's nuts. I saw something yesterday that said they can finish anywhere from 2nd to 9th. That's no longer the case with Michigan losing. For certain. Got a little bit of a cold if you can't tell. Oh, and before I forget, my man Pete, brother, look at it. Was kind enough. I don't know if you can see this. It's kind of dark here today. I'm not in the studio. But if you can, he sent me this incredible Yeti non-spillable coffee mug, which is wonderful. This thing, boy, the lid takes up a fourth of the whole deal, but this is unspillable. And it's lovely, and it's going to be filled with coffee here momentarily as soon as we hit that first break. But that's awesome. That's the best gift I've gotten in years. No kidding. And that says something about your age when the best gift you get is I don't know. That's a pretty cool gift regardless of age. I'm digging it. Appreciate you, my friend. Hitting up some more of the comments over here. Pete's on there. Hey, Pete. Now you ladies get to redeem one loss when they beat MSU. That is correct. As today, Indiana starts playing the Big Ten women's tournament. Let's not forget about that. And that's right. They will be taking on Sparty today. I don't expect this to be close. I shouldn't say that because it's a tournament and tournaments change everything. But yeah, Indiana's going to remember that they lost to them. But this team at this stage, I'm telling you, that's one of the things that impresses me most about this team. The Indiana women's basketball team, and including Coach Terry Morin. They don't get high. They don't get low. I shouldn't say they don't get too high. They don't get too low. They stay. They're calm. She's calm. That is a winning, and with their balance that is crazy, sick, good, that's an elite team. I cannot wait to see them play in the NCAA tournament against the talent they've not played against, because we've seen what they've done. Look what they did at Iowa. In women's, that's one of the toughest places to win right now. So I'm just looking forward to it. Congratulations again on Terry Morin's Coach of the Year in the Big Ten. They start play today, so make sure you check that out as they'll take on Michigan State. Our man Fred, the Easton Assassin, has changed locations. I'm looking for the invitation, Fred. Vince, Florida. Or is that supposed to be a different city? But I've never heard of Vince. Very cool. All right. Everybody else seems to have checked in. Oh, we got a new one. Hey, David. Don't recall seeing your name before. Appreciate you. Well, there's a good reason to be excited about watching the Lady Hoosiers. And I was talking to Charlie Miller's wife yesterday. They live in Dallas. And we were making plans for things of the men's NCAA tournament. But I said, I'm flying into Dallas because I expect to be there for the women's NCAA Final Four. And I'm not kidding. I do. And so I'm looking forward to that. This Indiana team, this women's team, they are good enough to win a national championship. That is not hyperbole. That is not, you know me, if you listen to this show, I don't do bias. I'm like, Indiana does. I don't see them as having a chance of getting out past the second round on the men's side. That's just my personal opinion. The women, I expect them at the Final Four. And yes, they are. Thank you, ma'am. They are worthy of a national championship. And looking forward to seeing how that works out. Looking forward to talking to our guest today, too, as we'll get ready to do all of that as we hit up. Let me hit up on the scoreboard from last night. I also want to mention Terry Holland, the longtime coach of Virginia when Ralph Sampson was there, passes away at the age of 80. Back in the day, man, Virginia was rolling back then. He coached for 16 seasons in Virginia. They went to 2 Final Four appearances. Of course, I think that was under with Ralph Sampson. He finished his tenure there with a program record, 326 wins. That was finally surpassed this year by Tony Bennett. In 1981-82, they won 30 games, their first time in school history. And from 1979 to 83, 124 wins, an NIT tournament win, and a run to the Final Four. Of course, that was with all of Ralph Sampson, who was the Naismith and Wooden Award winner. But thinking of the Holland family and folks down in Virginia as they are mourning that loss. But more basketball to get to, of course. Looking forward to hopefully talking to Mike Davis and Antoine Davis, even though he falls 3 points short of Pistol Pete's all-time NCAA scoring record. 3 points. Boy, and he was colder than ice last night, unfortunately for him. Just did not shoot the ball well. And maybe the basketball gods were just swiping balls away last night. I don't know. I won't say that when they join us. But he's still in a position that, look where his name's going to be. It's etched in stone up there high. I would be glad, more than happy to take a back seat to Pistol Pete Maravich. That's an incredible accomplishment, period. So I'm sure he's disappointed by that, but they also lost, unfortunately, to Youngstown State, which is in essence going to end their season. That was the Horizon League tournament. I think they, I forget the score, 71-66 or something like that, I think. Tennessee loses Ziegler, one of their players, for the season with an ACL tear. Ole Miss fires Kermit Davis before the season ends. I'm not sure why you would do that. Is because you can still look for another coach. I mean, let him finish the season. It just doesn't make sense to me to do something like this. I think that puts the kids in a bind. Hey, I think it's time to take a break. before we welcome Alec Lasley on. Let's go ahead and do that. Hey, we're listening to us from BB's Market, your local steakhouse, meat shop, baker. No matter where you live, what you need, they've got it with the most in-house made products around. It's incredible. Make sure you stop in. You can also pick up fresh fork items here and Go Team Bites as well. We've got Alec Lasley when we come back. You're listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friends from Endeavor Hospitality and Andy Moore Honda. Make sure you get more to your door with AndyMooreHonda.com. We're back right after this.
We'll be right back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Whether it's at our place or
God, I'm so dark.
How's it going?
What?
How's it going?
Oh, good. I'm just dark. I need a light.
Yeah, you're in a different spot.
Well, I'm just turned different is all. Oh,
Are you facing the other way?
that light. If I could get that thing to angle, that would be perfect. Don't see how they're up there. I can't see them, but I mean, I just look. Do I look too dark, Joe?
No, I can see you fine. I think you look okay.
All right. Okay. How much time we got?
Minute 12.
And you guys tell me about breaks. If don't be afraid just to pop on and say, time to take a break.
Gotcha. Will do. Alec, are you good for 2 segments today?
Yeah, at 9:30.
Yep.
Yep.
Cool. $30 seconds.
Exceptional dining experience. With weekly specials, quick, attentive service, Southern Stone Restaurant provides delicious 5-star comfort food with a Southern charm at 2-star prices. Southern Stone Restaurant is part of Endeavor Hospitality's Wow Club.
This segment is brought to you by Southern Stone Restaurant. Now back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on this Friday. A wet, soggy Friday. At least it is here. Cold and wet. Welcome aboard, Alec Lasley. How you doing, man?
Good. How are you doing?
Cannot complain. I'm coming to you from BB's Market, so that's never, ever a bad thing because you know what they have at BB's all the time. baked bacon. So it's never bad. It is Friday, but more importantly, Sunday. Just go to Rural King. I'm going to guess you've never been to Rural King. You probably don't even know what that store is, do you?
Nope.
Yeah, I had a pretty good guess on that one. Rural King is basically the Walmart for farm people. People that live in the no, seriously, you can go buy. They have food and stuff, but they have little baby chicks, horse stuff, the farm stuff, all kinds. Anyway, you can get about anything there. But one of their deals is they're always popping popcorn, and you can have a bag of popcorn when you walk around their big old place. But they sell these big old bags for $2.99. Sunday, you need to just go buy a big old bag of that Rural King popcorn, sit down, and I think are 10 of the 14 Big Ten teams in action on Sunday.
Yeah, I think there's at least 5 games.
That would be 10. So yeah. And I think there's 2 on Saturday. So, but Sunday is just going to be a festival because we have no clue as to who is going to finish where in the Big Ten standings. Illinois just jumped up to the top of the 2s, it looks like. Indiana staying kind of right where they are, with Maryland and Northwestern below them, which has the tiebreaker over Indiana. Indiana has a tiebreaker. I don't know, because that's going to go to the average of the games between those 3. And it doesn't matter until Sunday happens. Indiana finishes at 12-8. They need Maryland or Northwestern or Iowa to lose. I believe, correct? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 teams currently tied for 2nd through 5th. Or 7th. I don't even know. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. Yeah. 2nd through 7th is a 5-way tie or whatever. 6-way tie. With 1 game to play. That is the craziest stat that I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's and the biggest kind of wrench that was thrown into it was both Northwestern and Maryland losing earlier this week. That brought, I think, at least 3 more seed lines to almost everyone in kind of that middle area, and brought that back into play for everyone. Obviously, especially Indiana, who I'm not sure if they can still fall to the 9, but going into yesterday, they could fall anywhere from 2 to 9 if a lot of different scenarios happened. I think you're looking at the most likely spot, assuming that they get a win, would be kind of locked into that 4 spot and get that double bye. But they still have, there's so many different scenarios where potentially could jump up to the 2, right? If all 3, Iowa, Maryland, and Northwestern lose, they could drop down to the 5. If 2 out of those teams win, obviously, if Indiana loses, then it's kind of, that's on them at that point. So all Indiana really needs to do is just focus on taking care of business on Sunday, and I guess kind of hoping for a good result in one of those other games, something that, at the end of the day, probably should not have come down to the last couple games on Sunday. But that's where we're at after Tuesday's obviously disappointing performance.
Purdue escapes in overtime. Illinois, Michigan goes to double overtime. It's getting dicey now. People are playing for their lives, and it's showing. Let's see. Saturday in the Big Ten, there's only 1 game, and it will not impact the standings. Ohio State at Michigan State. I thought there were 2 games, but that will not impact. But Sunday, 6, the rest of the Big Ten is in action. There are 6 Big Ten games on Sunday, people. It starts at noon. You can start watching Big Ten basketball at noon and stop around 10 o'clock that night. So go get that big old bag of popcorn, because it starts out with number 21 Maryland on the road at Penn State, Alec. The road has been Maryland's kryptonite. They have barely won on the road. They've won virtually all of their games at home. Every loss, even recently, at Ohio State, a loss. Before that, at Nebraska, a loss. At Michigan State, a loss. I'm looking back at their losses. At Purdue, a loss.
Yeah,
at Iowa, at Rutgers, at Michigan. Yeah, they just lose to everybody on the road. This is a great opportunity for Indiana.
Yeah, 2-8 on the road on the season there for Maryland, and you're going at Penn State, right? A team that's still kind of fighting for some sort of bubble potential there to try to sneak in. They got a lot of help with some of the teams around the country losing last night on the bubble. Senior night, so we know pretty much anything goes when it's senior night, especially for I think that Penn State crew who, when you look at a guy like Jalen Pickett, a guy like Seth Lundy, guys who have been there for obviously 4 years, but guys who have meant a lot and done a lot to that program throughout their careers. Definitely a special night for a lot of the Penn State fans. They're going to be looking to obviously get that signature win that they desperately need at this point in the season. Obviously ending the regular season there on Sunday. So kind of a recipe for disaster if you look at it from Maryland's standpoint. But also, an opportunity for Maryland to really cement themselves, as a team that could potentially move past the first weekend here, or at least get a win in the NCAA tournament if they can go on the road, finish the season strong here, and then potentially make some noise in the Big Ten tournament. But a lot of people are obviously going to be kind of watching a lot of these games earlier in the day. At the end of the day, it really shouldn't matter. It doesn't matter. Indiana just needs to take care of business, and whatever happens after that happens. But I think a lot of people would be pretty disappointed even more if a lot of those other teams that Indiana, quote unquote, needs to lose to get that double bye or to even get up into a potential 2 seed in the Big Ten tournament, fall in Indiana's lap. And then Indiana obviously lays an egg, which they've done at times at home. When you look at obviously Iowa, when you look back to Northwestern and some of the other really slow starts that they've had at home over the last month and a half. So they need to be ready to play because Michigan still has an opportunity to make the NCAA tournament with the win and a little bit of movement there in the Big Ten tournament. So they're going to be coming in fighting for their lives and obviously want to ruin a senior night for a large majority of those Indiana players.
There's a very good chance that both Northwestern and Maryland do not have double byes for this tournament. Maryland has to go to Penn State. That would be a ninth loss. And Northwestern has to go to Rutgers, which would be a ninth loss. That is going to kick them out of the double bye, in my opinion, because you've got Purdue, they're locked. If Indiana wins, they're locked. Who else would that leave? This is Iowa. I expect Iowa to win. They will be a lock. I don't know. Rutgers maybe because of tiebreakers. I don't know. If both Maryland and Northwestern end up losing and Indiana and Iowa get those wins on Sunday, Northwestern, which was considered to be at one point, the only real threat to potentially get some sort of a share with Purdue, could drop all the way down to 9th in the Big Ten, which is absolutely crazy considering where they were just a week and a half ago, even coming into this week. But that just shows you obviously the Big Ten, with 1 to 10 realistically, or I guess take away Purdue, right? 2 to 10, 2 to 11, really kind of a coin flip when it comes to any of those matchups, especially if you have the better team going on the road, which a lot of big teams have not been able to win big time signature games on the road. And that's what obviously both Maryland and Northwestern are going to do and hope to not end on a 2-game losing streak going into the Big Ten tournament, which I think would be extremely defeating for
and deflating for both of those programs, considering what they've done over the last couple of weeks to get into this position to be to get a double bye, to potentially have a 2-3 seed, and now you look at what could be, which would be definitely a crazy turnaround when you look at again where they were just 4 or 5 days ago.
Yeah, and Indiana getting that double bye would be critical importance. I mean, that saves you from playing for Indiana. I'd say at least one extra game. They would not have to play on Thursday. They could start play on Friday. Moves you up. Depends on what 2 seed they're going to get, on which side of the bracket they land on, which it's in Purdue's or not in Purdue's. There's just so much to be determined yet, which in turn will determine what happens the following Sunday for Selection Sunday. As we look forward to that, I know a lot of IU fans are trying to figure the scenarios of where Indiana can land. I can tell you that their ceiling is no longer a 3. There is no way I can see that. I don't care if they win the Big Ten tournament. I don't think that they're going to jump up to a 3 seed now. I think that they may be close to the bottom of the 4s at the moment. But, I mean, it's hard to tell. But it depends so much on what happens in front of them, like I said. I just don't know that there's enough room for them to move up that far after, the bounces that they've had. I don't think that after the loss that we saw the other day at home, people are going to be too apt to make them a number 3 seed. Alec?
Yeah, I think, there's some crazy stuff which at this time of year could happen. A lot of things are going to have to happen if Indiana wants to get up there. I don't think, realistically that was ever too much in play when you looked at kind of what the 2 seeds were, because obviously some of those have shifted, but those are strictly going to be moving within the 2 to 3 line. So you're going to need a lot of help from those 3 seeds if Indiana's going to have any shot, and they would have to win the Big Ten tournament to have that potential. I think it's more likely, right, that you fall at the very last 4, or even if you don't win the Big Ten tournament, depending on what happens, right, you could fall into that 5 seed area. And that's just why the last week of the season, the regular season, is just so imperative and so crucial for a lot of these teams, because regardless of kind of what it does in, conference tournament seeding, a lot of these teams are really focused on what's going to happen and what potential seeding they could get in the NCAA tournament, and kind of where they're going to go, where they're going to travel, matchups, and everything like that. And you're going to kick yourself if you are that top 5 seed, right, in a really difficult region compared to that last 4 seed, and it comes down to the 3. If we're going back to Indiana specifically here, right, 7 out of their 10 losses this year have been by double digits. 6 out of those 7 double-digit losses have been by at least 14 points. Now, when you look at the other 3
say that again.
So 7 out of the 10 have been by 10 plus, so double digits, and then 6 out of those 7 double-digit losses have been by 14 or more points. The lone outlier there was Maryland, which was an 11-point game, and obviously that was right around 14-16 for the majority of that second half. But those other 3, right, the 2 Northwestern and then the first Iowa, been by a combined 5 points. So when you look at those 3 games specifically, right, they blew a 21-point lead to Iowa, and then they were down 17 and 21 to Northwestern both times in the first half. So the point differential that Indiana's seen in the losses has been astronomical. When you look at from minute 1 to the final minute of the game. And they're going to go back and kick themselves if they aren't able to stay on that 4 line. They're going to look at obviously those 2 home games to Iowa specifically, the blowout earlier this week, but even more so that 21-point lead to Iowa in Iowa City, and then either one of those Northwestern games, especially the one at home where you laid an egg to really start January and go on that 3-game losing streak.
We've got Alec Lasley from the Hoosier.com with us right now. We're talking NCAA basketball, IU basketball, and where will the chips fall? When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but preview Indiana and Michigan taking place on Sunday. You're listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friends from GoTeam, a part of the Endeavor Hospitality Wild Network. You can come right here to BB's Market and pick them up, or go to GoTeamBites.com and get them. They are a fresh, healthy snack whether it's for you, your family, the team. Come in a myriad of assortment of flavors, which are all fantastic and very healthy. Snack on the go as well. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio from BB's Market today, right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Golfers, here's a deal you won't want to pass.
Okay, Indiana wins Sunday. Maryland and Northwestern lose. I think Indiana's going to end up with the number 2 seed.
Well, Iowa would have to lose if that were to happen.
Oh.
If the other two lose, Indiana will be a 3.
Okay, they get the 3 seed.
Yeah.
They're probably going to be a 2 or 3 seed. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I think 4 is probably more likely.
Really? Who's going to finish in front of them?
I don't think both Northwestern and Maryland are going to lose.
On the road?
Yeah, I just don't think both are going to lose, right? That's having everything fall into place for Indiana, right? I just feel like there's going to be something that but at the end of the day, right, if all you're looking for is a double bye, then it doesn't matter. As long as you win, you'll theoretically you should be able to get that. The only chance they don't is obviously if all 3 Iowa, Maryland, and Northwestern win, which, again, I don't think all 3 will, but I don't think both Maryland and Northwestern will lose there. But then again, who knows? I mean, Rutgers is in a rut. They need something to finish the season off on senior night. We'll see what happens there. But I just Rutgers is in a world of hurt.
Anything shaking that I've missed? Not.
No, at Flory he's expected to be at the game on Sunday. Travis Berry talking about trying to get back to a game. Potentially could happen this weekend. I still trying to get any sort of confirmation if he's going to go anywhere. But he doesn't play till Monday in his semifinal game. I believe it's semifinals or quarterfinal game. And then I think Gabe Cupps plays tonight, but Jalen Harrelson plays tonight. Sicily plays tonight. Kyler's going to the Harrelson game, I believe. They play Zionsville.
With a sommelier on staff to help you with your selections. Feast also provides a wide variety of cheeses, gourmet sandwiches, entrees, a coffee bar, bread, pastries, all made fresh and mouthwatering. Stop by Feast Market and Cellar today.
This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indy Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you here on this Friday. Hope you're doing well, ready for the weekend. Not a very nice day out there, I'll say that, but appreciate you coming back. Jim Coyle here with you as always. Dustin Schutte on assignment. Today we've got Alec Lasley sitting in right now. And don't forget, we're brought to you by our great friends from Remax Realty. If you're in the market for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore and her 2 decades of experience. It could be the difference between you getting the home you want and not. Reach out to her, Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com. Back with us, Alec Lasley from thehoosier.com. Make sure you give him a follow, and me as well on Twitter, at Al Lasley, and mine is at Jim Coyle, ISB. Please do that. And while I'm thinking about it, if you have not subscribed to us, please do so. It helps us get the word out. Hit that toggle button for notifications so you don't miss an episode. Alec Lasley from thehoosier.com back. still recruiting going on during all this basketball action, Alec. Indiana has had some guys in. It's hard to get them in because they've got their own tournaments going on right now. Indiana's in sectional play or deep into tournament play, so it's hard to get guys out right now. But with only one home game left, that's I guess probably going to be their last opportunity to get recruits out to a game.
Yeah, absolutely. Sundays, especially with teams moving into deeper sectional play, a lot of quarterfinal matchups, semifinal matchups coming up, both tonight around the state, and then moving into to next week. There'll probably be some visitors on Sunday. Still working on a full list. Flory Badunga, top 5 prospect in the 2024 class from Kokomo, is expected to be there. He's been to Indiana a few times now. I believe this will be his 4th unofficial visit. Still no official visit there, but Indiana's continuing to push hard. They've been out to see him, whether it be a game or practice throughout the fall a few times. And a couple guys still trying to work on potentially setting up visits there. Travis Perry trying to get back to Indiana. Indiana is one of those programs really pushing hard for him at the moment. He's 2024 4-star point guard out of Kentucky, on pace to set the all-time scoring record in Kentucky high school basketball history here coming up. Obviously still has all of next season to do it, but about 90 points away from doing it. So with the potential to break it here if he continues to win the next couple of games and get into that state championship game.
Okay, now let me stop you there for a second. How crazy would it be for Indiana to land the all-time point scorer in Kentucky? That's just is something that would have never happened 10 years ago and beyond. I'm not saying it's a bad thing at all. It's just how things have changed. And his interest seems to be pretty damn genuine in Indiana. Is he being recruited by Kentucky?
So he does have an offer from Kentucky. Kentucky has been kind of on and off with him. There was a reason why Indiana waited as long as they did to offer him, because he was on an official visit back in the spring to Indiana, had the chance to offer him then, watched him numerous times throughout the summer, playing on the same AAU team, Indiana Elite, as Raleigh Burgess, another 2024 prospect, and then Flory Badunga. All 3 of those guys were teammates. Brian Walsh, the whole Indiana staff, been extremely active in all 3 of those recruitments. Kentucky offered, so they kind of wanted to see exactly which way that was going to go. Right, a guy from Kentucky getting a Kentucky offer, typically that means that's gonna go one way, but it didn't. So Indiana continued to stay in contact, continue to try to feel out kind of which way he was leaning. Talking to a few people, it doesn't sound like Kentucky was ever that much involved to begin with, and that offer was more or less of a, hey, we'll toss you an in-state offer here. Seems like Kentucky's trying to get back into that race a little bit.
I bet that would not go well for John Calipari if this ends up going Indiana's way and he plays well for Indiana. Even if Calipari's still there, that would not play well for John Calipari. Yeah,
and he hasn't spent a ton of time actively watching him in person. He was actually at one of his games a couple of weeks ago, where I believe he had 61 points in that game in front of John Calipari. It was a blowout win for
61
County.
6-1,
yeah. And so Kentucky's trying to get back involved, but that was why Indiana waited up until about a month ago to extend that offer. And right after they offered him, he ended up coming on campus that weekend for an unofficial visit as well to Indiana. So Indiana's always been a team that's been kind of lurking and actively pursuing him, but just maybe not to the extent outwardly as some other programs. But once they offered him, they've quickly gone 2 feet in, not only with Mike Woodson, but with that entire coaching staff. Brian Walsh has done a phenomenal job with that relationship and maintaining that relationship up until this point to keep them within striking distance if they did want to offer. And now that they have, they're definitely one of those programs that is near the top of that recruitment. Visited Ole Miss, visited Michigan, Purdue, all officially. So those are some of those other programs. I would look at Purdue and Michigan and even Virginia as some of those programs that are pretty active and pretty far up in that recruitment. And Kentucky's still trying to, I would say, work its way back in there. But at the end of the day, right, it's Kentucky. They can come back from behind in a recruitment in pretty much any recruiting cycle. But I think this one has the potential to be a lot different of a field than some of those other national recruitments that they're typically involved in.
How impactful has this season been for Indiana? They've had some down moments, losing to Arizona and Kansas were not great, but they've also had some really, really high moments, big moments, and they've had them in front of some of these recruits when they had Purdue in Assembly Hall and beat them when they were number one. That has to stand out really big in a recruit's mind, and so it seems like this season has helped with the recruiting, and which is the natural course of things, but we haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, so I mean, wins are wins, right? All these college campuses have big time environments. Obviously, Assembly Hall is much bigger when you have that type of environment and that type of setting. But I think the more important and critical part of any kind of recruiting cycle is the development of the players on the current roster. You really didn't see that last year because that was Mike Woodson's first year, still trying to get kind of a hold on what he had. This year, though, right, you've seen the development of Jalen Hood-Schifino from day one up until now, where, again, I say this again, he's clearly 1B to Trace Jackson Davis's 1A for this Indiana team. There's real no two there. Those guys are both star players who can not only score at will when they want, but have the ability to take over games. And we've seen that with Jalen Hood-Schifino multiple times this season, whether or not that's, be on from the very beginning or go on an 8-0 run by himself late in games and hit big time shot after big time shot to close games out. And the ability that the staff has and the confidence that they have in him, that's critical when you look at freshmen who want to come in and play a significant part to a team, not only to any team, but to a winning team. That's crucial there. You look at Trey Galloway, the development that he's made as a shooter, right? That's significant, even though a lot of people may not think it is, right? He's leading the entire Big Ten at 3-point percentage right now. Obviously not shooting the volume that some other, shooters may be. But when you look at it, Indiana has now the top two shooters in the Big Ten, Miller Kopp and Trey Galloway. The ability that coaching staff has had to orchestrate that turnover of two guys. Miller Kopp struggled a little bit last year, obviously, with his shot. But Trey Galloway, never been a three-point shooter, never been a shooter to begin with in his Indiana career, has made 12 threes coming into this year. That's significant. You look at Trace Jackson Davis, the development and the progression that he's made, where it's night and day. His all-around game is just so much better than what it was last year, and that's why he came back. That goes a long ways, and even more so than a recruit coming into an environment and seeing a win, because you're not going to win every game, right? There hasn't been an undefeated team since Indiana, so they're going to have losses, right? Even if they see a really good environment and a loss, that doesn't take away much in their minds. But seeing the development, not only for them, but the people around the recruitments, I think is a lot more significant than just seeing a win or being in a big-time environment.
Absolutely. And Indiana is going to be in a little bit of a pickle next year at guard. Thank goodness for Trey Galloway and his development, because that is going to be crucial to Indiana next year from a veteran standpoint, because I don't expect Jalen Hood-Schifino to be in an Indiana uniform. So you're going to have Gabe Cupps coming in. I don't know. He's not Jalen Hood-Schifino, but will he be able to fill that void?
No, I mean, Gabe Cupps is going to be, even Ja'Kai Newton, both players are going to be really, really good 3-4 year players for Indiana. But when you talk about coming in and impacting the game from day one, Indiana's going to go out and get a transfer portal point guard that they need to bridge this gap. That was the good and bad thing, right, about bringing in Jalen Hutchifino, a guy who had the potential to be a one and done, who surely is now going to be a one and done. But what that does for the recruiting for your program and what that does for bringing in transfer portal additions is bigger than having him back for another season. Showing the ability to put that trust into someone like that, that's the best recruiting pitch that you can have. So Indiana's going to go out and they need to land a portal point guard, whether it's for 1 year, whether it's for 2 years, because again, you look all around the country and obviously Jalen Hutchifino is a bit of an outlier, but there's a reason why Indiana's still not a top 10, top 5 team. You look at the top 10 teams in the country, those guys are all led by upperclassmen point guards, guys who have been around the game for 2, 3, 4 years. And that's what makes those programs from a top 15 program, from a Sweet 16 ceiling to a Final Four national championship contender. And that's the one area where Indiana needs to make sure that they go out and land, right? They were able to do that with Xavier Johnson. Obviously this season, not really the way that, a lot of fans and even, people around the program wanted it to go, with the broken foot and him being out obviously since December 17th. But they need to go out and land that to take that next jump when they're obviously losing, 4 or 5 really, really significant pieces to this team this offseason.
Yeah, that reminds me of Purdue. Purdue's not a Final Four team this year. Next year, people better watch out because Zach Edey will be back, and you'll have those guards with another year of experience. That's going to make a gigantic difference for Matt Painter and that team next year. Indiana, yeah, they're going to have to get a portal point guard. Like you said, I agree with that. And what are your true thoughts on Indiana's tournament hopes this year? I just don't see them getting past the second round because we talk about this great shooting. You have the number 1 and the number 2 shooting 3-pointers in the Big Ten, but by attempts, they're probably, are they in the top 15, in the top 20? And when you have that, why do you not use it a little more effectively? It's one criticism I have of Mike Woodson is he's been too one-dimensional. It's been Trace Jackson Davis and Jalen Hutchifino, and that's it with some sprinkled in. On one hand, I say, hey, if you're a shooter, you got to work and find your own shot. And I think that Miller Kopp has had plenty of opportunities that he passes on or does not get himself in position correctly for, because Trey Galloway kind of works to get his own shot, find his own shot a little bit more. But is Indiana doing enough to use this to their advantage?
Doing enough? No, absolutely not. They ranked 352nd this season in 3-point attempts. Right, they're shooting 15 a game.
Why would you? I mean, I have to ask, and I know you don't have the direct answer because you're not in there. You're not Mike Woodson, but how do you not? How do you not? The word that I'm needing is escaping my mind, but starts with an E. Exploit. How do you not exploit that? I mean, that's what got your butt kicked by Iowa. And that's another thing. I was talking about these shots. They were down 20 points for the majority of that game, and yet still not attempting 3-point shots. I didn't understand it then. I don't understand it now. And it's going to cost them again.
Yeah, and when you look at Iowa specifically, right? That 30 outscored 39-6 on threes there. You go back to the Michigan State game, I think it was 33-15. So, Indiana, they're a good shooting team, and they need to continue to do that. You have multiple guys who can shoot from the perimeter, and you've not been able to. Taking 15 threes a game is obviously, as you can tell, one of the worst in the country, and one of the lowest in the country. But when you have such a good percentage, all you need to do, just imagine if you took 3-4 more a game. You're not asking you to take 25 a game. It's just the minimal number, and that's what I agree with you there. I've been it's been frustrating at times to see the lack of I should say from an outsider kind of looking in terms of that aspect. the lack of true play calls for 3-point shooters, when I felt like there was a lot more last year for a guy like Parker Stewart, who struggled at times with his consistency. And you have now a couple guys proven with that consistency throughout, almost 30 games of what they're able to do. And that's the one thing where I do think they need to do if they are going to make it past the first weekend. So to get back to your original question, it's going to depend on matchups, right? But, I think Indiana has the ability to get to the Sweet 16. But when you look at, again, all of the losses that they've had, they've not been competitive in those losses. And a lot of that stems from the first 5 to 7 minutes of the game. They need, moving forward, to get off to good starts, which I thought they were over up until Tuesday. They need to get off to good starts. They need to utilize their 3-point shooters, and they need to just continue to play with some sort of energy. If they do, I think they can get to a Sweet 16. If not, I could see them losing in the first round.
Yeah. Today there's a media availability. Unfortunately, it begins with Woody before we end the show. So you'll be on that, I assume, right?
Yep. Yeah, we'll all be on there.
That'd be a great question for Woody. Coach, you've got the top 2 3-point shooters in the conference. Is there a way to integrate that a little more into the Indiana offense? Because the attempts are not there. I'd love to hear what he has to say, because the truth of the matter is the offense runs through Trace Jackson Davis, which is not a problem, but if it was that and something else, but it's not. The 3-point comes by accident. The 3-point shots seem to come by accident to me, especially for Miller Kopp. He's not going to shoot on the fly. So they have to do that. They cannot. Watching that Iowa game was like beating your head against the wall. And it's still, I'm like going, what the hell? I don't get it. You have to be able to make adjustments in the game. And that's something else they don't seem to do a lot of.
Yeah, they do struggle with adjustments at times. I think it's just more of a almost threat of what the defense gives you. Again, one of the biggest things about the Big Ten, and especially Purdue, that it's always been disappointing to watch when it gets to the NCAA tournament is they're never the ones to have teams adjust to them. They're always the teams to adjust to the smaller, the quicker, faster, more athletic programs, and that's why you haven't seen a Big Ten team win the NCAA tournament, win the national championship since 2000. And that's the biggest gripe that I have with the Big Ten, because they are more of a slower, grinded out, physical team. When it comes to the NCAA tournament, that you need to be able to have more than that. And that's why, every single year, a lot of people talk about how the Big Ten is the best conference. I've never seen it that way. I think the Big 12 consistently is the best conference when you look at teams who have the ability to win a national championship. And that's why I consider that the best conference year and year again. And that's no different than this year, right? Because, again, going into the NCAA tournament now, you have 3 or 4 teams theoretically that could win in the Big 12 because they have all that athletic ability. They have up-tempo quick guards, and they like to push the ball. No one in the Big Ten really likes to do that for consistent parts throughout the game. And that's why they're going to struggle again in the Big Ten tournament or in the NCAA tournament to get teams past the first, second weekends.
So we've got it all lined up on Sunday. What can the people expect at the Hoosier.com?
Yep, we'll have some recruiting updates today. Obviously, Kyler will be out checking out Jalen Harrelson tonight in their sectionals matchup. And we'll have a few other things leading up to, obviously, senior day for a lot of these guys in Indiana and moving into potential Big Ten tournament seedings and everything like that.
All right, brother. I appreciate you very much. Make sure you give him a follow and check out everything they have at thehoosier.com. Alec, Lasley, appreciate you. Have a great weekend, sir.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
You bet. Up next, we've got Zach Osterman from the Indy Star coming on. Don't forget. Brought to you by our great friends from Barbara Pop Real Estate Services. For those of you down in the Louisville, Southern Indiana, Jefferson, Floyd, Clark, Harrison County areas, they have served those communities for over 3 decades, and no one can get you into the home you want quicker or less expensive than Barbara Pop Real Estate Services. Reach out to Barbara at barbarapop.com or our friend Matt Lincoln, Matt at barbarapop.com. We're back with Zach Osterman right after this.
We'll be right back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Andy Moore Honda is Bloomington's #1.
Hey, Zach, how are you today, man?
Hey, how we doing?
Good, sir. I was talking to Mike Davis. I was getting him and Antoine on.
Yeah, we'll see if – I mean, I'm assuming somebody will invite them. I would think one of those one of those smaller tournaments will –
Oh, and there's I haven't opened up the email. I know I've got it somewhere or a text, something. There's some new tournament.
I mean, I don't know about a new one, but I just think like CIT or somebody would just, you know.
What did they finish? I can't.
Yeah.
They were the 8th seed, so I don't know what their record could not. Did they have a winning record? Oh, you don't have to have a winning record anymore, do you?
Well, I don't know if you have a winning record or not, but they're 17 and 15, so they
Oh, okay, so they did. All right, that's what I was looking for. Oh. So the saga may not be over yet.
Right. I mean that's what everybody wonders is you know, are they going to is somebody going to invite them? Because I mean, you know, those tournaments, nobody watches them. It would be free publicity to, you know, be to host the game that broke the scoring record. So
yeah, Mike just said let's do Monday because we'll know if we play in the CBI or not. So
that makes sense.
So the record is going down. That would mean Detroit Mercy pays to play in the CBI, and he would get another game, and it would fall in moments.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm really, and I'm not on the fence about it. I'll be honest with you. I think that this. I'm not going to say this to them, but I think there should be an asterisk or something next to this one. This is. How do you? And I'll ask you this on the air because I think it's a great question.
I think personally, the Maravich's record is just like the epitomizes the idea of an outlier. Like it's not even just that. You know, I mean, there was no 3-point line. You could not play basketball as a freshman. All those different kinds of things.
To us and enjoy healthy eating with stocked meals.
Stack all of that up. I
Today at
just think it's like you're going to tear your hair out caring about whether, you know,
this segment is brought to you by Feast Market and Cellar. Now back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on this Friday, of course. The golf club at Eagle Point Studios mobile unit, as we are at BB's, where we are each and every Friday. You're a butcher, baker, no matter where you live. Make sure you stop in. Zach Osterman from the Indy Star joining us now. We were talking off air. It did not dawn on me because I was texting with Mike Davis as well that although Antoine Davis fell 3 points short in their final game in the tournament, knocking them out, which I was thinking that was going to be the end, Zach brought up the point, well, you know, I'd be surprised if someone doesn't invite them to a postseason tournament. They're 17 and 15, possibly the NIT. And then Mike says, you know, possibly the CBI, the other one. So this record is going to fall.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I would presume that one of those tertiary tournaments will make room for Detroit Mercy, and room for Antoine Davis to come in and set the scoring record as part of their tournament. And, I don't – there are people who, sort of dispute the idea that Davis and Pete Maravich have sort of walked the same path because Maravich didn't have a three-point line. Davis got so many more games. First of all, if it wasn't objectionable to you before, but it is because Detroit gets invited to some postseason tournament, then I don't really know what to tell you. But second of all, I think we were talking briefly off air, as you said. Pete Maravich was such a black swan event in basketball. Just the sheer volume of his production and the era he came up in was so different for so many reasons. When you talk about there was no three-point line, freshmen could not play basketball. He was such a singular player, I guess is my point. I mean, like when he played in Atlanta, the back of his jersey didn't say Maravich, it said Pistol. Like he was such a singular.
Holy cow! I didn't know that.
Within the context of basketball, that I think if you're going to tear your hair out over, how many more points he might have had if he'd had a 3-point line, or what might have been different if he'd come up in this era, or how many more games Antoine Davis. Just let the record be the record, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Maravich's contributions to the sport, his place within the sport will always be so distinctive because of how distinctive he was, that if you are fretting over this record, it feels kind of, I don't know, like you're just sort of, you're stressing yourself out for nothing. And I believe I saw a story with talking to, I think it was Pete Maravich's son yesterday, that basically just said, I think my dad would be cheering Antoine Davis on, and I get that. And I think it's, again, it just,
I think it's a very great thing to say by the family.
And I just think, as I said, Pete Maravich is such a singular individual in the history of basketball. Like there's never been anyone remotely like him in any number of ways, that, if Antoine Davis does break this scoring record, I think we're still going to be more than capable of honoring Pete Maravich and Antoine Davis at the same time.
Most people, or do you think that most people will still consider Pete Maravich as the all-time scoring leader, no matter where he sits on the line? And will the NCAA
I think there will be people who will recognize his number as something distinctive. I think, in this, you get into this debate a lot in baseball, who's the true home run king,
right?
Is it Hank Aaron? Is it Barry Bonds? Who is the
Marison Ruth got, they went back and forth on that.
Yeah. I think, again, Maravich, whether you see Davis or you see Maravich as the all-time scoring leader, Maravich has a legend that, is, I mean, you think about Maravich the way you think about Steve Prefontaine, and maybe that's a little bit too because he died young. I don't know. But you think about some of these, there are certain athletes that burn so brightly and so sort of distinctly against their sport that the numbers are part of their story, but they are not the story. There is an aura. There is a I mean, the word is legend. I would use legend. There is a legend attached to them that is that surpasses anything they put in a record book or looms larger, casts a longer shadow than anything they put in a record book. And I don't think Maravich is ever going to lose that. I don't think he's ever going to come close. And so, if somebody, let's say Antoine Davis gets another game and breaks the scoring record. If somebody asks me in 5 years, who's the all-time scoring leader in college basketball, I'm going to say Antoine Davis. But if somebody asks me about Pete Maravich, I'm going to say, the sport will never see something like him again.
Yeah, and it was 44 points he averaged over 3 seasons. Craziness. Speaking of basketball, we've got a lot of craziness. We were talking with Alec Lasley earlier, Zach. This Sunday is, in essence, a mini selection Sunday for the Big Ten, because so much is going to be decided on the games that are played on Sunday. There are 6 games on Sunday. So the bulk of the conference in play, with, I think, all but one of those games having an impact. The last game was like Wisconsin at Minnesota, which that should not have an impact. But you've got Maryland at Penn State. Maryland's not good on the road. Illinois at Purdue. Nebraska at Iowa, who Iowa will probably win and probably jump up to that number 2 seed. Of course, Michigan's at Indiana, and Northwestern is at Rutgers. So, and Indiana, of course, needs a little bit of help. I think they'll get enough help to get that double bye, whether it's the 4th or the 3rd, depends on who does what. But they have to take care of business, and we thought that was a foregone conclusion at home again the other night, but that was far from the case with Iowa. So Michigan right now, I've said this before, and then I recanted, but I think Michigan is currently out of the tournament again. So they're obviously fighting for their life as well. So there's just going to be so many storylines on Sunday, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, I think Indiana's range of possibilities is anywhere from the 2 seed to the 9 seed, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of where they can land. And I think that the likeliest distribution is the 3 or the 4. But that, as you said, that starts with requiring them to win their game against Michigan. And I think that's all obviously Indiana can worry about, and probably all Indiana will worry about. But, I think we could all struggle to remember a season where so little was settled, so deep into the season. Because the thing is that when I say that the range of possibilities for Indiana is anywhere from the 2 to the 9, if I'm not mistaken, that's true of like Northwestern as well. I think it's true of Illinois as well. I think Rutgers ceiling is a little bit lower now, but Rutgers could go anywhere from the 5 to the 9. I think Michigan State even has a narrow chance to be the 2 and can also land as the 9. If you're Indiana, all you worry about is winning. And I think, I wrote this and I still believe it. You shouldn't need gut checks on the last day of February. Having said that, you got one. You gave yourself one with just how badly you performed in that Iowa game. How you recover is, if you're Liverpool, how you pick yourself, or Liverpool, I'm sorry. If you are Indiana, how you pick yourself back up is kind of maybe the one last sort of defining feature of your season. And you're getting a Michigan team that, as you said, is going to be desperate. On the other hand, it's a Michigan team that's going to be tired. Michigan has played into overtime in its last 2 games. I'm assuming the Wolverines went home last night from Illinois, so they'll have gotten in very late from Champaign, like this morning. Then they'll be getting on a plane again tomorrow to fly down to Bloomington. Indiana's already beaten Michigan once. I think there are ways that there are some matchup advantages Michigan can leverage on Indiana, but it's not quite as stark as a team like an Iowa or certainly a team like a Kansas. This is just if you're Indiana, you got to find your way to winning this game, and don't worry about anything else. And then if you get the double bye, great, but win this game, cement yourself as a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, and then worry about what you got to do in Chicago when you get to Chicago.
Yeah, and then of course that is another storyline there, which plays out, of course, leading into the NCAA tournament, which Indiana's in a little bit of a different territory than they have been in, well, a decade. They did make the tournament last year by the skin of their teeth. That will not be the case this year, and they could possibly, depending on what they do against Michigan and in the Big Ten tournament, get a favorite seeding, whether that's Orlando and Louisville, which would be tremendous for Hoosier fans. But they've just not been in a position like this for a decade, to where their destiny is more in their hands. They've got a little more control about not where they end up, but how their season goes, because they're already at the level of they can go down if they allow it, but they're higher than they've been going into the end of the season in close to a decade, Zach.
And I mean, listen,
2016. I should say 2016.
Yeah, I think the disappointment for a lot of people, I think, of Tuesday will have been that there was this sense that if Indiana closed the season strong, won its last 2 home games, guaranteed itself that double bye, maybe won the Friday game in the Big Ten tournament, that the committee might bump Indiana up to a 3. It had already seen Indiana as the top 4 seed when we saw the bracket reveal a couple of weeks ago, and all Indiana done since then was strengthen its resume. The loss at Michigan State was acceptable. The win over Illinois was strong. Obviously, the win against Purdue was hugely impressive. One of the best, one of the best singular wins anybody's got in the Big Ten this year. And so it felt like maybe Indiana was pushing up toward the 3 range. And if that was going to be the case, then Indiana could legitimately sort of claim to, maybe get into Columbus, maybe get into the South Regional and play its way through Louisville if it got to the second weekend, all those different kinds of things. And it felt like Indiana, just when it seemed like Indiana was rising, Indiana was surging, Indiana was taking control of the direction of its season at the right time. It felt like Indiana threw a lot of that away. And, at this point, I think a 3 is probably just a little bit out of reach. Maybe if you can make a deep run in the conference tournament. We know the conference tournament doesn't have a huge effect on seeding. It can't. The committee has to have its mind made up about a lot of these teams. But if you get a couple teams on the 3 line that lose early and you play all the way to Sunday, maybe, and you pick up some quality wins along the way, then maybe the committee can tweak 1 or 2 little things, move you up 1 line, move somebody else down 1 line. I think what's a lot more likely is Indiana's on the 4 line, and if they beat, if they beat Michigan on Sunday, I think that is cemented. I think the committee has largely made up its mind about Indiana. But I think you're probably, if you're IU, you are looking at a slightly less, a lower seed and maybe a less favorable path through the tournament in terms of, do you get into the South Regional? Do you get to start in Columbus, or do you have to go somewhere else, et cetera? That being said, Indiana's in comfortably. And there are ways in which this is a really tough team if you have never seen them before on a short turnaround. They're going to get a double-digit seed. I mean, I think they're virtually guaranteed at this point to face a double-digit seed in the first round of the tournament. Their loss profile tells us that sort of team shouldn't give them a lot of trouble, that they are capable of essentially just sort of out-muscling smaller teams, even good smaller conference teams. And the question will be what they look like when they have to, if they can, let's assume they win that game for a moment, what they look like when they get to probably another high major or, a mid-major plus in that round of 32. So it's hard because I understand Indiana fans who are frustrated and angry after the loss Tuesday night and the way it happened. On the other hand, you do have to keep in mind the broader sort of picture, which is that Indiana's had a good season. It set itself up well. And if it can just kind of find its feet here, maybe win Sunday, then maybe get one in the Big Ten tournament at least, then the Hoosiers are probably still going to feel good heading into Selection Sunday.
The one question I have is, are fans rightfully concerned not getting beat by Iowa at home in that game? Because it's not like they're a horrible team. They're good. They're going to be in the tournament. They can shoot. But that lack of intensity kind of reared its head again. And not only that, there's two things. There seemed to be there was no quit, but it was almost a resignation of defeat. But secondly, and I've talked about this with everybody, Indiana is one of the best three-pointing shooting teams by percentage. They've got the two best in the Big Ten, but they're one of the absolute worst in the country in putting it up. And I know the offense runs through Trace Jackson Davis most of the time, but I don't understand why they cannot find some kind of balance to exploit having Trey Galloway and Miller Kopp to work on getting those shots, because they cannot win every game with a 2-point game.
No, listen, I think we've all been arguing this in different ways all season, and you're right. They're 20th nationally in 3-point percentage. They're third in the Big Ten, and they've been second for most of the season. As you said, they've got, multiple players that are pretty consistent knockdown 3-point shooters. Trey Galloway is shooting 50%. Miller Kopp is shooting 46%, and that's on 119 attempts, so that's not a small number. Jalen Hood-Schifino has definitely sort of slowed down on the threes. I think a lot of that is because he's kind of had to focus his offense elsewhere. It's not to say he hasn't kept shooting them in some games. He took 5 in the Michigan State game, but he's also taken 11 in the 4 games around the Michigan State game. Technically or tactically, Indiana's 2 most important offensive players, neither one of them uses the 3-point line very much. Hood-Schifino does some, but Hood-Schifino is also a player that needs to be creating for others. And he doesn't have that. He's a good shooter, but he doesn't have that Yogi Ferrell pull-up in him yet. I think it'll come for him in time, probably in the NBA. Right. But, he's much more comfortable in that mid-range. And you can understand why, because the other high-usage offensive player Indiana has obviously doesn't take any threes. It's Trace Jackson Davis. And so often, a big part of the reason why Hood-Schifino hunts that mid-range jumper is because it's open, because teams will drop off screens so that they don't give Jackson Davis a free run at the rim. And that means that there is a shooting pocket, 14 to 16 feet away from the basket. You've got a player who's very confident shooting that mid-range jumper. He can be very prolific doing it. My point is, if you look at Indiana's team profile, Trace Jackson Davis uses 30.5% of possessions. Jalen Hood-Schifino uses 25.7% of possessions. Among players who have been healthy for a while, because Xavier Johnson obviously has been out for a time here, the next most prominent player in terms of possession usage is Malik Renew at 23.6% of possessions. He plays off the bench. You have to go down to Race Thompson at 18.5% of possessions to find another starter who uses possessions, which is to say gets to basically have the offense flow through them as much as Jalen Hood-Schifino and Trace Jackson Davis. There are parts of Indiana's team profile that just don't lend themselves to shooting a ton of threes. But they probably should shoot more. But, and I keep saying but, it's March 3rd. They're not going to. So there's not going to be a night, I don't think, maybe one here or there. But, it's if you look at, just the evidence of our own eyes, the evidence of what we've seen, they've attempted more than 15 threes once since the Northwestern loss at home. They attempted 18 in the Northwestern loss. They attempted 20 in the win over Ohio State. Other than that, their highest attempts numbers were 15 against Iowa on January 5th, 15 against Michigan State on January 22nd, and 15 against Purdue over the weekend. They just don't take a ton of threes. They won't. It's not in their profile. And again, I would argue that they should, but they're not going to. It's if that evolution was going to happen, it would have by now. And it is a problem. We saw it when Indiana played Arizona, for example. They hit 10 threes in that game. The problem was Arizona also hit 10. So that wasn't a strength that Indiana could leverage to get back in that game. You looked at just every time they've played Iowa, they actually outscored Iowa from behind the 3-point line in Iowa City, but Tuesday night was very ugly. They were outscored by 42 points from 3-point range in the Penn State loss. They were outscored by 15 from 3-point range in the Michigan State loss. Same for the Northwestern, was just gunning it that night. They only shot 8 of 33, but Indiana still only made three threes at Northwestern, and they got outscored by 15 in a 2-point loss at Northwestern. If this team was going to shoot more threes, it would have by now. I agree with anybody who says it should. I agree with anybody who says that it probably would go well if they could find their way to doing it more regularly, but this is just who they are.
Well, I've got one last question for you, and then you can get to the presser, and you can ask Mike about that. But Xavier Johnson, lots of talk. I've gotten out of the speculation game. I'm not going to speculate when he's coming back, if he's coming back. I don't know what his thinking is. That's up to him. I've explained that he has a career to look at after leaving here, wherever it's going to be. It's going to be someplace, and he has to weigh that. Is he healthy enough to not get hurt right now? He cannot in any way come back if he is not 100% healthy. I mean, I don't think he would if he's not 100% healthy. If that is the case, is it too late in the season? There's no way he's still in. It would take probably a couple weeks to get into game shape. And a couple weeks from now, the season could be over. I don't know if they even attempt to bring him back or not for a defensive purposes, if nothing else. But I don't know what that scenario is. What do you have thoughts on that? What's your opinion?
It is tough. I mean, we saw him dress. We saw him really push himself through. I mean, he was working up a lather, in warm-ups on what was that, Tuesday night? I'm losing. You can tell I'm losing.
That alone tells me that he wants to, because I don't think that he would be out there dangling that carrot in front of the fans. If that,
you wouldn't. I mean, you wouldn't think so. But one way or another, I just, your point's well taken that it's tough to bring him back at this time of year. It's worth saying, like, if he did play, you would imagine he'd probably be on a minutes restriction. And so let's say he could play 18 minutes against Michigan. Well, he'd get a normal amount of, kind of rest and recuperation between that and Indiana's first Big Ten tournament game. But then from there, it's when you play the next day, when you play the next day, when you play the next day. And then when you get into the NCAA tournament, there's a little bit more of a gap, but it's when you play in 48 hours or less than 48 hours in some cases. So you don't have that time to go back and get your treatment and stretch things out and try it again and, ramp yourself back up. And it's also worth saying too, with the possible exception of Indiana's first practice post Iowa for point making purposes from the coaching staff's perspective, it's not likely Indiana's practicing very physically right now. This is the time of year, and Bob Knight was famous for this, where, up through Christmas, practices were brutal, they were physical, they were long, they were arduous. And then once Big Ten season started, they tailed off dramatically to the extent that you talk to former Knight players. And I'm not saying Mike Woodson is just following exactly what Bob Knight does, but that's certainly going to be one of the sort of approaches that informs the way he does his job. You talk to former Knight players, they'd have 30-minute practices at this time of year. They'd spend twice as much time in the film room as they would on the basketball floor, because the point was there's nothing left to push out of you physically. You've got to, stay fresh. The grind is wearing you down. Practice is much more for refining fundamentals, doing some shooting work, doing some free throws, things like that. And then, just hammering the details of game plans. So, it would be you'd have to be creative about how you got Johnson back up to speed. But if you could get him on the floor, if he wanted to be on the floor, and you're right, maybe there's some consideration at some point given to his future. If it's not the NBA, there is clearly a level of the professional game somewhere where he will fit in. He's too good of a player not to. But it may be difficult at this point for him to be back on the floor in an Indiana uniform this season.
I agree. Zach, we'll let you go so you can get out here and get to the presser, brother. Appreciate you so much. We'll see you on Sunday at the Simon Scott Assembly Hall as Indiana taking on Michigan this weekend. Appreciate you, my friend.
Absolutely, sir. Have a good weekend. We'll see you Sunday.
You as well. Zach Osterman of the Indy Star joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Brought to you by Metalworks Brewing Company, of course, where you can find it in all of the Endeavor Hospitality restaurants. Great places like Southern Stone, BB's right here, of course, Feast, Market and Cellar, the Allery, even Fresh Fork, I believe, has it there. But make sure you stop by and check it out. Also down at Courtroom Sports Grill. Don't forget about that. At Cabello. They have it at Cabello as well. So you can find Metalworks Brewing Company in and around the Bloomington area. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Friday, right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're looking for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need.
I owe a break here.
Yeah, we can do one more. Do you just want to go 10 minutes?
We have to do one. I'm just telling you, we owe a break. I'm teaching you, actually. We owe a break, so we cannot skip breaks any longer. There are too many radio stations. So yeah, I owe a break. I'll split it right in the middle.
Okay, cool. You want to go to like 10, 15, 17-ish?
Wait a minute. Do you have any of the clips?
Of what?
Mike Woodson, all that stuff?
No.
Did you say no?
Yeah, I didn't know. John didn't tell me anything about it.
All right.
We have a Woodson press conference clip. I'm sure you already used that earlier this week.
No, I didn't. But here's another question. All right, I'm forwarding this to you right now.
Sure.
Would you know how to take a link live on here?
I don't know. I've never tried it before.
Go back. Kill this. Well, there's a Woodson presser coming up, and to Joe, I just sent you the link to it.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to use my phone to get on it. Actually, see if you can find that link and figure out how to take
here.
What?
We got about a minute until we come back. Just letting you know.
Okay. While I'm doing the show, find that link. See if you can take that link live at 10:15, and let me know. Sure. Just text me or whatever.
Okay. $30 seconds.
Check out their custom growlers. Metalworks Brewing Company has an updated menu, new brews, and will be offered in all Endeavor Hospitality restaurants. Come taste with Dr. Hobbs' Brewing. Metalworks Brewing Company. Bring your passion and your thirst.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on this Friday from Beebe's Market, side of the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios mobile unit. Since it's raining, especially, we're at Beebe's every Friday, so happy to be here. But watching that rain fall steadily out there, kind of a cold one. But good thing is, there's a butt ton of basketball this weekend. Important basketball to watch just in the Big Ten. But outside of that, what team from outside of the top 15 do you think is going to crash the party for the Final Four? Who's the outlier? You know, we know all the teams are at the top. You got Kansas, Arkansas, or Houston, Alabama. Does Houston make it to the Final Four? They've been seen as being so great all year, but they play a Gonzaga type schedule where they're not challenged much. Doesn't mean I'm not saying that they're not good. They just don't go through the grind a Big 12 or a Big 10 team does, which also is difficult for injuries and whatnot. It's a different level of play, man. But who's gonna Miami? Pitt from the Big East, both have been playing well. You got Nigel Pack down there on Miami squad, making that $400,000 a year. Seems like he's earning it, I guess, making them happy. Michigan, I'm looking at some picks by some of the rivals people, and I'm like, yeah, no, this did not age well. Michigan is not going to make the tournament, I don't think, much less be an impact. Some people picking North Carolina State. And here's which player is your pick to help his mock draft stock in March. Travis Grab says, it seems conceivable to me that Indiana's Jalen Hood-Schifino is in the process of playing himself into the 10 to 12 range. I think that's just outside of the lottery picks, but it's still a first-round pick. If there's something to be said for clicking at the right time, it could be said about the Indiana Star, who threw up 35 against national title contender Purdue last weekend. Still, the freshman just isn't a volume scorer. The versatile 6'6" guard has loads of translatable skills, and it goes on. But, yeah, Jalen Hood-Schifino's gone, people. I know that a lot of people are usually, we'll see, he's gone. You can forget about it. He's a first-round draft pick. There's no reason, zero reason for him not to go. He does not have an allegiance to Indiana. Not from Indiana. Even if he were, Mike Woodson would tell him to go. There's no, you don't skip a first-round draft pick. Philip pointing out 2 lottery picks in this game. I don't know about lottery picks, but Jet Howard, definitely a potential first-round pick. The lottery is top 14. Thank you, Philip. Did they stretch that out? It hadn't always been that many, has it? I thought it was like 9. But so that changes things. Now, yeah, you are a potential lottery pick. Well, yeah, it's Romeo Langford was like 12th, and I think he was a lottery pick, which still shocks me. But so there you go. Indiana will have their second lottery pick in 5 years? I look at that and think about that, and you would think there would have been more success in the interim for Indiana, but there are other factors at work there that prevented that from happening. But I think that factor has been cured. How apropos, and the timing is right. speaking of cures, there it is. You can't see it if you're listening on radio, but Justin comments, the problem with Archie wasn't his recruiting, which is actually inaccurate. It was his recruiting. Justin goes on to say, I thought he was one of his strongest attributes. Half of Purdue's roster was recruited hard by him, partly because no one outside of the state of Indiana would play for Archie Miller. And those in the state that he could get, half of those just wanted to play at Indiana, not for Archie Miller. The draw was Indiana. That draw was not that big to those outside of the state. That's why he never landed a serious recruit from outside of Indiana. So I don't think Archie can recruit. I don't think he can coach. I don't think he can do much but finagle millions of dollars out of athletics directors. He is great at that. And I wish I could do that. I wish I was as good at that as he is. We've got to take a break. We'll come back, set the stage and set the table for this weekend. The Indiana women also, we'll talk about them as they start play today in the Big Ten tournament. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio brought to you by our good friends at Reynolds Family Dentistry down in Sellersburg. If you're down in the southern part of the state, stop by and see Dr. J. You'll leave with that championship smile. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Whether it's at our place or yours.
Yeah, Jim, it's not possible for me to take that Zoom over the air. We'll have to figure out if there's another way to do it in the future if you want to do that, but it's just...
You'd have to use a different laptop.
What's that?
You'd have to use another laptop probably.
Yeah.
Or use your phone and just feed it in.
Yeah.
I bet I could do the audio.
I mean, if you could just stick your phone up to your computer, I mean, that's...
Well, but we need the audio. We need the video, too. That wasn't...
Yeah.
I can't hear this damn thing. I need plug in headphones. I can plug into one side of this thing. Yes, I do. I'm going to try to do something crazy here. Let's get crazy. Let's get crazy. Okay. Let's need one set, boys. They're all junk here. Shit. Tell me when we come back.
You got 55 seconds.
I will just take the volume line.
Okay.
I didn't see that coming. It happened. You can do about it now. You just got to build on it.
30 seconds.
Try not to let it happen again. I thought practice was pretty sharp yesterday. And it's a tough practice. But everybody put forth effort and they got through it. So.
Exceptional dining experience. With weekly specials, quick, attentive service, Southern Stone Restaurant provides delicious 5-star comfort food with a Southern charm at 2-star prices. Southern Stone Restaurant is part of Endeavor Hospitality Small Club.
This segment is brought to you by Courtroom Sports Grill in Bedford.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this
Golf
Friday, coming to you
More
from
Indiana
PB's
Sports
Market,
Radio with
as
Jim
we
Coyle.
generally do. Oh, a little early there, my bad. Hey, we're going to join Mike Woodson's press conference currently going on right now live. He was just asked about Miller Kopp needing to step up in a leadership role.
No complaints with Miller. He's tried to do everything that's asked of him on and off the floor. And on both sides of the ball, he's been pretty good for us this season.
Mike Schumann.
Yeah, hey, Coach. I know after that 3-game losing streak, you said that you kind of got the team's attention and got them playing harder by practicing harder and, just pushing up the pace in practice. How do you balance that with, it being March and, having concerns about guys wearing down?
It's tough. It's real tough because, again, I think back in the day, you didn't have that tournament. So you just basically got set to go right into the NCAA tournament play. And, the Big Ten tournament is grueling, especially, I just think back to last year when you play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, that's tough, man. And you're a shot away from playing Sunday. My thing is only the strong survive, man. The tournament is what it.
We're joining Mike Woodson's press conference live right now as he is talking before the Hoosiers take on the Wolverines on Saturday. I might have lost that connection, but we'll have that complete press conference up for you on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, the YouTube channel as well. So where you can find the rest of Mike Woodson's interview, today's press conference, and we'll have, I believe it's Race Thompson meeting. We'll be meeting with him later as well. But Indiana getting ready to take on the Wolverines on Sunday with a ton at stake, a ton on the line. Said that about the Iowa game, and they got blitzkrieged. I expect to see a different Indiana team. For one, I don't know that Michigan can shoot quite as well as Iowa did. But Indiana has shown that they can beat this team because they've done it. But Michigan has a great combination in Jett Howard and, of course, Hunter Dickinson. That turned off. So, how will Indiana fare? What are they going to do? We'll definitely see. I think that they win this game and put themselves in a position to get that double bye, which seemed to have been lost after that Iowa loss. It's just mind-boggling. But thank the basketball gods for the Big Ten. That is the wackiest. This has to be, from a Power 5 standpoint, without question, the wackiest finish to a season. Of course, I'd have to go back and research it, but man, there's not one in my memory where any conference has had this many teams this close, this late in the season. It's all coming down to the last day, people. And the championship would actually be coming down to this. Had Purdue not been strong enough, I guess you got to say, I'm not going to say lucky, they won the games. They went and they beat Nebraska in double overtime, one of the worst teams in the conference. They beat Ohio State on a last-second three-point shot, one of the worst teams in the Big Ten. They barely win last night, but they won. But this my only point to that is this entire Big Ten thing could be just wackiness if first place was involved. That would make it wild. It's already pretty crazy as it is. And don't forget, it is senior day for Indiana. You get to hear the speeches. Most importantly, I'm expecting Trace Jackson Davis to definitely step up to the microphone to say that thank you and goodbye. So that as long as they win, it'll be a great emotional ceremony. Indiana, again, for the first time since 2016, they finished the season knowing that they're going to the NCAA tournament. Think about that. It's been 7 years, almost 2 graduating classes. They know for a fact they're going into the NCAA tournament before they go to the Big Ten tournament. How many years were under Archie did they go to the Big Ten tournament knowing, well, we got to do something here to make the tournament? And that, of course, never materialized. They don't have that problem this year, but now they have the opportunity to better themselves, better their seed line. Find something, find what they found at Purdue. And that's the one thing I don't understand about this team. They can do stuff at Purdue and then come home and do what they did against Iowa. There was a lot of mental part of that, but regardless, you can't have that now. Once you, outside of you get to the NCAA, but it's a one-day tournament, as my friend Charlie likes to say all the time when we're playing golf. So let's go. It's a one-day tournament. In essence, every game is a one-day tournament. You have to look at every game as a one-game tournament, because you lose, you're out. Even in the Big Ten, take pride in it. Try to be the first team to win the Big Ten tournament at Indiana. Trace Jackson Davis needs a crown for his royal career. I mean, he's not going to be forgotten with all the things he's done, but of all the names that he is and former players that he is that has around him on all the lists that he is on, every one of them won a national or a Big Ten championship. The Big Ten championship is out of Trace's reach. A Big Ten tournament championship is, and not only would that be gigantic, it would be Indiana's first. So that would indeed put a royal crown on his royal career. Does it happen? I don't know. That would only require this team to play well three straight games. Have we seen that? Not here of late, we haven't. And the difference between the Big Ten and the NCAA tournament is you only play 2 games a week in the NCAA tournament, and you have a day of rest in between. In the Big Ten tournament, for them, it will be, if they get the double bye, a minimum of 3 straight, no rest, all of great importance. They will all be mentally challenging because you're going to be playing a good team every time that wants nothing more than to beat your butt, because they want to climb over you. This is just a race to the top of the pole, man. Stepping on people's shoulders, you do whatever you have to do. Indiana needs to find that kind of mentality. I've seen it in Northwestern. I've seen it in Rutgers, where whatever it takes. And let's not forget about the Indiana women's team. Today, they start playing the Big Ten tournament, taking on Michigan State, one of only 2 teams to beat Indiana this year. Of course, that first game happened without Grace Berger. That will not be the case today, as she, of course, is Indiana's leading point guard. Indiana probably wins this game by 20. Just guessing. But I'm going to watch it and enjoy it. I hate that we're not coming to you from the women's Big Ten tournament. Normally we would have been, but thank you to Kevin Warren for putting it in Minneapolis. So that didn't happen. And I assure you, the media coverage is horrific up there. The fan participation will be horrific, and that's a shame. And that's the Big Ten. That's a slap in the face to everybody else by the Big Ten, in my opinion. But it's more not the Big Ten, it's Kevin Warren, who's not even there anymore. So I wish they would rescind all the stuff that's going on up there, that just bring it back to where it belongs. But it's neither here nor there. Hopefully they get the win today and they can move on to tomorrow and then on to the championship game on Sunday. Won't that be fun to watch? And then wait for their name to be drawn as a number 1 seed. That would be incredible for them on Selection Sunday. Man, it has been another fun day. It's been a fun week. It's been a great week. Can't thank everybody enough that was on the show today, of course. Alec Lasley, Zach Osterman. We were going to have Mike Davis and Antoine Davis on, but during the middle of the show, I was texting them and I realized they're going to play another game. I didn't think they were going to go forward. And Zach, thanks to Zach Osterman, he really got me thinking about it. And then Mike said, yeah, they're waiting for they expect they're going to play another game. So the record will fall. We'll talk to them next week. We'll let you know when that's going to be. I think Charlie Miller is going to be on over the weekend for the game. And then, of course, we'll be back on Monday to see how it all breaks down and who's going where. And we'll know all of that on Monday's show. Make sure you tune in. Until then, thanks to Joe, the producer, for filling in for us. But most importantly, thanks to you guys. Without you, we have no reason to be here. Go out and have yourselves a great weekend. I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
Do you need oops.